This is the Todd Shapiro Show on Canada Talks, SiriusXM 167.
One of the hosts of the Roto Bros Fantasy Football Podcast. Please welcome Chris McConnell. Hey, Chris.
Hey, what's going on, Todd? Thanks for having me.
No, dude, of course, man. We do have something in common. Full disclosure is I do some brand strategy building and IR work with a company called drafters.com. And I know you do some promotion for Drafters as you're a wonderful sort of a mind in that industry and again, provide people a great place to play. But how long, let me ask, like how long has this been your go-to gig here?
Well, actually, being a host of the podcast, this is something that me and my co-host, Mark Wimpkin, actually just recently started. We're only 14 episodes in, guys. I mean, it seems like it's been a lot longer than that. There's been so many more episodes. It's been such a wild ride, such a fun ride as well. But this is something, Mark and I have been doing this for 15, 16 years, playing fantasy sports. And, of course, when DFS, Daily Fantasy Sports, recently took off, he and I, grabbed the saddle on that, and that's definitely taken off with us as well. So this is fantasy sports in general has been a big part of my life and really my favorite hobby for the good part of the last 15, 16 years. But the podcast is brand new with Mark and I. And, it's different from other fantasy football podcasts that you're going to listen to, and everything's different about it. It's high quality from even the sound quality, the listenability of the show is pretty great as well. And not only that, but we're gonna give you guys two different two different viewpoints to view the game of fantasy football and really football as a whole. Mark, he's a big analytics guy. He lives and dies by the analytics. And with me, I use analytics as more of a peripheral tool. It's not my Bible like it is for Mark. And so it really creates a great contrast on the show. So you're really getting two well-informed, genuine, authentic opinions on every topic that we discuss. And it just makes for an excellent show, an excellent back and forth. And like I said, the info, the data, the analytics, the stats, and the all-around discussion that you're going to get from the Roto Bros Fantasy Football Podcast is truly unlike any other fantasy football podcast. So definitely check that out, guys. We really appreciate it. And anybody that's already listened, we appreciate the support. We also have a lot of listeners from Canada as well. So that's actually pretty cool for some of the listeners. Yeah,
that's awesome, dude. And, listen, you sell it well, but, I got to be honest, when I think about what goes on into, fantasy sports, It is exhausting. I mean, when I was younger and before kids, I had time. But I mean, and it's the intricacies and the knowledge and studying and like you really are. Some of you, who are good at it are qualified to be like actual GMs of teams and stuff. How much of your beyond the podcast? How much of your life is focused on this?
It is, and this is not an exaggeration. It is legitimately just a second job. I mean, it's a second full-time job. It's really an all-day, everyday sort of thing. And a lot of it is helping people out, giving advice. If we're not recording the show, we are in our Facebook group that I'm sure we'll mention here in just a minute, but we're in there giving people advice, helping people find leagues to join, helping people who have leagues that need owners, helping them find owners to fill those vacancies for those teams in their leagues. And again, on Twitter all day, every day, people, tagging us and, asking questions, who should they trade for this week? Who should they add? Who should they drop? Who should they start? And we don't mind it at all. This is definitely not a complaint. We absolutely love interacting with people who share the same fiery passion that we have for fantasy sports. And I know a lot of people feel like it's almost a little bit of a nerdy thing, like Dungeons and Dragons for jocks, I guess. In a way, but it's something we really enjoy, and I've met so many great people in the industry, and it's such a great networking tool to meet other great minds in the fantasy industry, and not just for season-long and dynasty leagues, but like we mentioned, DFS, daily fantasy as well, and that's kind of how we, through this entire ability to network with everybody, that's how we met, guys like Andrew and Zach over there at Drafters, and really the entire great crew over there at Drafters. And it's been great partnering with them and doing some promotions for them as well. It's really been a blast. And just everybody we meet just seems to be phenomenal. So it's a blast. It is. We say it's another full-time job, but is it really a job if you're having a blast, right? So,
well, I mean, listen,
we love it. We love every second of it.
And Chris, I love that, man, because it shows you have passion and it shows you have knowledge on it. And obviously it shows that you have hard work and you're giving back. You want to share that knowledge, which is always nice. Chris McConnell, who, of course, is doing the Roto Bros Fantasy Football Podcast, but also that Facebook page he mentioned, the group, the FSA Fantasy Sports Advice and Analysis. It's like the largest fantasy sports group on Facebook, working with drafters.com. And you know, I get the neat thing about, you know, when you grow these big groups on Facebooks and these big communities in which you've done, you get that instant feedback, you get that communication. So you must see that, like, you know, you are helping people with the best of your abilities, of your advice. Do you take some pleasure from that?
Absolutely. And Todd, you mentioned the instant, the instant feedback and getting these instant answers. And that's one of the things that we really pride ourselves on over here at FSA, who, again, Mark Wimkin and I were both admins over there. We have a great admin team as well, with several of us, helping run that group and helping build it over the years. And we've only been around since 2014. That was when FSA was born. And so, to have, almost 15,000 active daily members is something special. And going back real quick to, you mentioned the instant, the instant advice, the instant answers and everything. That's something we really pride ourselves on. And one of the reasons is because there are other fantasy groups on Facebook that are actually larger in size than FSA is. But what sets FSA apart is it's not just for fantasy football, it's baseball, basketball, hockey, all sports. And it's a great place to just talk sports in general as well. But not only that, another thing that sets FSA apart from all other Facebook groups is the fact that not only are we so large in numbers, but we are active all around the clock, super active all around the clock. Like I said, 14 to 15,000 daily active members. And it's just really something that we just, like I said, pride ourselves on, the activity of us and all the members. And people know they can go to these, other fantasy groups with 20,000, 30,000 members and post, their starting lineup and say, hey, who should I start this week, or who should I play in DFS this week? And they might get 4 answers. You post it in FSA, you're getting 20 to 30 comments, and your post is blowing up, and you're just getting a ton of advice from a ton of different people that share the knowledge and that share the passion for fantasy sports.
So fantasy sports and football are all obviously very, very synergetic, and we talked about the work ethic that you do to, build your best teams and everything. What makes you, Chris, so good at what you do? And why do you like certain players, and how do you do your drafts? Do you have a strategy? Let's get more to the specifics of some of the teams that you put together.
Yeah, and a lot of the times it is really about matchups. I mean, there is a lot that goes into it. You really do. You want to be good at it. You can't just set your lineups off at a whim. And that goes for season-long fantasy football or fantasy sports and daily fantasy sports as well. You can't just go in, choose a lineup, and say, hey, hopefully I'm lucky, I'll be done with it. If you really want to succeed and you really want to see results, you've got to look at the injury reports. You've got to stay up to date with the news. You've got to look at the data and the stats and the analytics. You got to look at the matchups. If you're choosing a quarterback that, for instance, is playing the New England Patriots, we all know the Patriots are eating alive every opposing quarterback, it seems, on a weekly basis. So you probably don't want to start, or have a quarterback in your starting lineup that's playing the Patriots that week. So there is a lot that goes into it. And the data and the analytics and the information really goes deep, and it's not just a real broad thing. You really do have to set aside some time to really start to kind of comb through it all, especially when you're playing daily fantasy and your money's on the line. You know what I mean? I mean, when you're going in and you're spending, $20 on a lineup on a single contest, and you really want to make sure that you are getting the most out of your money so that you have the best chance to come back with a profit. And so that's something that's definitely important as well. So there's a lot of different resources, a lot of different websites that both Mark and I contribute to and endorse as well. So and not only that, but you also want to find a great platform to play on. Whether you're playing on a season long website that hosts fantasy football leagues, or whether you choose a DFS website, a great one like Drafters that we discovered a couple years ago. And as soon as we discovered it, FSA, we wanted to pair with them instantly. Like I said, they're great guys over there. And it was just an instant sort of not only connection, but a friendship between, both fantasy entities here in FSA and Drafters. So we've just had a blast with the entire thing.
Yeah, that's why I like Drafters because it's not necessarily as intricate. Where they got the daily rankings and the snake drafts, and if someone gets hurt, they substitute for you.
Right.
You can pick 3 options, and that to me is a nice sort of viable option. And obviously I work with the company, so I know all this stuff. But if you're not a diehard, so to speak, or you are a little distracted, whether it's family or working, couple jobs to pay the mortgage and stuff, but you want to have some fun on the your off time. But you might not know a player gets injured just before, so they'll substitute for you because those injuries can be killer, right?
They can, yeah. And here's another thing. I'm a big supporter of small business, right? So Drafters being a small business that they are, it's great to support them and find come across a great team in the fantasy industry that just has a passion to they're not money hungry. They are genuinely interested in people winning and people having a great time using their platform. And not only that, but bettering their platform. If there's a bug on the website, let them know, and they've got it fixed within an hour. It's amazing. They listen. They hear everybody's concerns. They listen to suggestions. They're excellent guys over there. We could not be prouder to be paired with them. And like I said, fantasy sports as a whole, it just makes the game more interesting because you could have a quarterback. You could be playing a quarterback in one of your lineups, DFS or season long, and he plays for the team that's playing your favorite team. So it's kind of that's kind of a compare and contrast. You want the other quarterback to do a great job, but you want your team to win at the same time.
Chris, so who have been some of your, I guess, who are the biggest surprises? What teams, what players in the NFL so far this year?
I think one of the biggest surprises has been Chris Carson for the Seattle Seahawks. A lot of people knew that he was going to get, a pretty good chunk of the work. But I think a lot of people went into the season thinking, okay, this is the guy that is going to share. He's going to be in about a 50-50, 60-40 at best split with Rashad Penny, who's another running back that's also in that backfield that the Seahawks actually just spent a first-round pick on just 2 seasons ago. So it's really surprising to see Chris Carson getting not only the workload that he's getting, but being just an every week RB1, top of the line RB1 for everybody's fantasy teams. And he has literally been money almost every single week this year. So he's a great surprise as well. Darren Waller for the Oakland Raiders, the tight end. He's a guy that's been a huge surprise and a pleasant surprise for them. They're dealing with a lot of injuries over there in Oakland and a lot of issues, of course, with the Antonio Brown fiasco this offseason. So Darren Waller is one of those great bright spots that really came along, and he has been a target hog all season long. And now with Tyrell Williams, one of their number one wide receiver, hurt now, he's dealing with a plantar injury in his foot. Darren Waller, he is a guy that you definitely want to ride the rest of the season in any fantasy sports format, be it season long or DFS, because he is going to continue to receive a massive amount of targets. And targets are really everything because those breed opportunities, and of course, opportunity breeds results.
Yeah, without a doubt. And is there like, do you start getting into predicting which teams you think will already be in the Super Bowl? Do you start thinking that way, or do you just think more about your daily, about your fantasy teams that you put together?
I mean, it's kind of both because, like I said, in FSA and even on the Roto Bros podcast, we discuss, just real life football and sport and football in general.
Sure.
So we're talking about team success and things like that. It's not 100% geared toward fantasy 100% of the time. So yeah, we do go at it. We talk about, we discuss, which teams have the best chance for the Super, to make it to the playoffs.
Let me ask, can the Bills keep up this pace? Can the Bills, I know they're playing the Dolphins, I think, this week. So, that should be an easy win. Can they're 4-1. That's, from where we are, a lot of Torontonians, a lot of Canadians, for some reason, love the Buffalo Bills.
Well, I can tell you right now, the Bills are definitely going to keep it rolling this week, probably with a pretty good amount of ease against the dumpster fire that is the Miami Dolphins. Now, and for fantasy purposes, if you're a team that has Josh Allen as your starting quarterback, even in DFS, this is a guy you might want to latch on to for the next several weeks because, through week 8, week 10, he has a really attractive fantasy schedule, playing some defenses that are susceptible to giving up a lot of fantasy points to quarterbacks. So this is a guy you definitely want to keep an eye on. And look, that offense and that team as a whole is only going to go so far as Josh Allen will take them. Josh Allen is never going to be, everybody needs to realize this, he's never going to be as pure a precision passer as Peyton Manning or Tom Brady. He's never going to be that seasoned of quarterback, but he's always going to make some boneheaded decisions, but then he's going to make a throw that absolutely blows your mind. And that's the good thing about him. He's a playmaker. He's a game changer when he's on point. I do believe that Buffalo has some work to do. This is a tough, competitive AFC. Right now they're in the driver's seat. But man, if they can steal a win from New England at some point this year, this is a team that I would say if they can lock down one win against the Patriots, somehow, some way, they're a lock for the playoffs, and they could be a dangerous team because they can run the football and they play great defense. So they are really built for cold weather games in the playoffs.
We see that the Packers are off to a good start, 5-1, and can Aaron Rodgers pull out maybe another Super Bowl?
It's possible, but you know what? I'm going to tell you. It looks like they've got a great running game. They're playing some solid defense, at least on the front end. The back end, I think, is still a little susceptible. But the good thing for them is, football 101, defense 101. We all know a great pass rush can make a bad secondary look pretty darn good because the quarterback has to get rid of the ball very, very quick. And when that happens, the quarterback is more susceptible to making mistakes, and thus you have more turnovers. So right now the Packers can really rush the passer in a very, very solid manner, and they've been doing it all year long, especially with Preston Smith coming off the edge there in Green Bay. So it's really going to come down to the offense. And right now they're dealing with Devontae Adams, dealing with his turf toe injury. They need him back bad. Geronimo Allison got hurt the other night as well with a chest injury, so he's kind of ailing. So they've got the running game. They've got the quarterback. They've got the pass rush, at least, from the defensive side of the ball. And they seem like Matt LaFleur, first-time head coach, is doing an excellent job. So it would seem to us that they've got a great head coach, so they're ready to take the next step forward in that regard. It all comes down to the receiving core. They're going to have to throw the ball. This is the team's bread and butter, but they are trying to run the football more. And so far, they've been successful. So they're another team that, kind of like the Bills, they're built for these cold weather playoff games. And at 5-1, leading the division, they may be able to host a playoff game. And that's going to be huge when you're a city that when you're a team that doesn't play in a dome and that has it plays in cold weather and bad weather. You have to be able to run the football, control the clock, control time of possession, and get the other offense off the field playing some great defense with great pass rush. Green Bay can certainly do that.
Wow, Chris McConnell, man. You also, I love how in depth you go. You can tell you're good at your fantasy sports, dude. I hope we can continue these chats. I was going to say the one thing you can't predict, though, is how the refs are going to make a terrible call to help you win the game. But
tell me about it.
We saw
the Lions. Somebody tell the Detroit Lions that.
I know, poor Lions. Listen, I do have to run for a hard out because we do a news update at 6 o'clock, a live update. But let's stay in touch. I'd love to even get you on maybe weekly to talk football. I think it would be really good for people to help with their fantasy sports teams. And people love the daily fantasy sports, FSA, and make sure you go check out the Roto Bros Fantasy Football Podcast and the Facebook group SFA Fantasy Sports Advice and Analysis. And of course, drafters.com, where you can have some fun. And, it's not as time consuming, I like to say, but it's just as intense. So thanks to Chris McConnell. We do appreciate your time. Hope to get you back soon.
Thanks, Todd. It's been a blast. You guys have a great week.
Cheers, pal. Enjoy week 7, the NFL. Is it already week 7 or 8? I don't know. I think it's 7.
This is the Todd Shapiro Show on Canada Talks, SiriusXM 167.